Right. Can everybody see the slide pack?
Yes.
What can you see it moving?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I hope you're well. For the next 45 minutes, not just myself, but Matt Murphy and I are going to try to entertain you, as well as to sort of bring you up to date on where we are with the Energy Conscious Organization program. I've gone into a little bit of detail at the introduction just to clarify that everyone knows what it is, and I'll be going on and talking about what we're trying to achieve, where we are, and also in the middle of the session we're actually going to make a presentation. It's such a shame we can't do some of these events face to face, isn't it? But we're doing a presentation to Matt, who's actually become an approved EnCO practitioner, which I'm very proud of. I'll leave Matt to explain how proud he might or might not be when we get there. So in terms of the agenda today, I better just tell you a little bit about myself. In fact, I'll let you read the slides. I describe myself as a little bit of a weirdo, in as much as there aren't too many people that qualified with a degree in energy engineering almost 40 years ago, which is in itself is quite frightening. And I've been a member of the Energy Institute for over 40 years, and that is quite frightening. My background is really one in terms of sort of heavy engineering and practical technical solutions, and I went through a complete life change scenario from a work perspective in about 7 years ago, when we undertook a behavior change program at Rolls-Royce, which some of you might have seen a case study on that in previous events, when the savings that were actually determined using measurement and verification were surprisingly huge, and I wasn't expecting it. I knew that it would make a difference, but I was completely unaware how big a difference it would make. And that led, when I was chair of the Independent Energy Consultants Group of ESTA, to a small team coming together who'd had similar experiences, and we realized this is a world-saving initiative. So we developed a journey to actually start to try to get the world to take behavior change programs seriously. That's not to put aside the technical side at all, but it's of such significance that it really needs addressing, and sadly is still not really given the priority that it should do. So in terms of the agenda day today, this is what I'm going to run through. You'll see that we've got the award a little bit later to Matt, after which he's going to actually give his case study, which is really interesting and quite motivational. And then I'll sort of sum up at the end. If you have got questions throughout, as Mervyn said before, please put them into chat, and we'll also stop at the end for Q&A when we can unmute. So what is behavior change, apart from the obvious? Well, first of all, it's not necessarily just to do with energy. I mean, we've got a situation where we called our initiative the Energy Conscious Organization because there's such a lot of work to do just in the energy field in terms of behavior change. But all of the principles and everything that we talk about actually apply much wider. So they, they could be sustainability, net zero, HR, production efficiency, all of these things. But we're concentrating here on energy. And if we can crack energy in the next few years, we'll have done very well. So why is behavior change in energy important? Is because it's absolutely staggering what input and impact people actually have to energy consumption. You'll see towards the end of the presentation, but just to get it out there, our challenge is that in terms of energy use, our evidence would indicate, and I'll show you some case study outputs later, our evidence would suggest that if we assume that 50% of energy use is efficient and has to be used, and it could be more than that in certain organizations if they're energy intensive, and it could be less than that if they're not energy intensive. But that's the average. Of that 50% therefore that can be saved, our premise, again from evidence, is that, which might be surprising to people, is that technology will only solve 50% of that. The other 50% is through people. And that is because people actually affect technology as well. It's not as simple as turning things off and having shutdown programs and those sorts of things. There are over 140 different types of behavior change interventions, but those definitely incorporate technology, because someone programs and then has to manage the setting of whatever that technology is and how it's being controlled. The other thing on this particular slide that I'd just like to point out is that when trying to measure the success of a behavior change program, which is where some of the obstacles might be, if you like, in senior boards in the UK, let alone globally, is that it's often not been proven, and it's often the savings just can't be measured. Well, there's a reason for this, and the reason is that such behavior change programs have never been done or often not done on a holistic basis historically. So what that means is that unless you do many of the 140 interventions all at the same time, then you're not going to be able to measure it. So it needs to be a substantive program such that it can be measured. So tinkering around the edges with behavior change is really a waste of time, and it's not actually helping the cause of behavior change programs. They have to be done substantially, and the potential is huge. So what is EnCO? So the Energy Conscious organization has a number of different strands, but in essence, what we're trying to do, and many of us that are involved with this, put all of our time in for nothing. We're not looking for commercial gain. We're actually looking to try to change the world. Is we're trying to engage, empower, and equip organizations. And if that involves energy professionals within end user organizations or consultants to help support end user organizations, it doesn't matter. So we're trying to get it out there that as part of the net zero journey, implementing behavior change programs is a must be. I can't tell you who I was talking to yesterday, but there is currently a proposal out. James is on the call, so he'll know who this is. But the customer actually shared with me all of their initiatives that they're planning for their next financial year, and the return on investment for all of this whole list of projects was kind of between 4 and 7 years, except for one of them, which was the behavior change program they're looking at, which had a payback of 3 months. And the return on investment was therefore something like 0.2 or 0.3. And they were checking with me, is this real? And the truth of the situation is it is. So not only is behavior change something that really must be done, it's absolutely still quite incredible that organizations aren't doing it just for the commercial advantage. But I think the reason for that is that it's the awareness of what the message is that we're actually giving, we'll talk a little bit later about our interventions with government bodies, and we've spoken to quite a few government bodies, but we're fairly early in the beginnings of our journey, and we're a limited resource of people. So again, if anyone wants to help to support the initiative by putting in time, that also would be very welcome. I should point out that, as you'll see from the slides, that this is a program between Esther and the Energy Institute, who have been very supportive. So again, just thinking about what is EnCO. Again, I'll let you have a look at these. I've mentioned some of the points. Another of the perceived downsides of a behaviour change program is around the wording that I've put in there, long term. It does take effort. It continues to take effort. And a key ingredient of any good behaviour change program are mechanisms to ensure momentum. And again, historically, some of those elements have actually been lacking. So that doesn't mean that they can't be long-term. It means that the mechanisms need to be incorporated to ensure they are long-term, and they are not difficult. So it's about how programs are rolled out as much as anything else. So especially with respect to COP26 then, so why is EnCO so relevant? Well, I've already talked about how energy is only one area in terms of behaviour change. But if organisations are now pledging towards net zero and hopefully starting to work out their plans of how they're going to achieve their targets, footnote, they should have worked that out before they set their targets, then one of the most financially advantageous energy efficiency schemes is behaviour change. If you think about the energy hierarchy, which is in the order of lean, clean, green, not many years ago, everyone was talking green as being the ideal. Well, it's not. Being green and clean, so clean air, water, clean land is becoming increasingly vital. Resources are very vital, but lean and not using it in the first place is one of the most obvious statements I feel that I make. And non-consumption. So therefore, we don't have to build the infrastructure to be able to generate what is required in the first place, let alone whatever that energy is that's actually saved. Just seems such a no-brainer. And therefore, not using energy in the first place has surely got to be the most financially attractive option open to government. Now, through COP26, with one possible exception, I've not really heard behaviour change mentioned, which is, it's abhorrent, really. It's just mind-blowing, despite our efforts with government. I think it seems that I'm not knocking government. To me, they're all the same. But to actually go into the conference giving the impression that we're still going to be driving cars, we're going to be flying planes, and no behaviours need to actually be changed, was such a missed opportunity. But there we go. So the advantage and the upside and the motivational part of it, though, is that behaviour change projects are such a low payback. So therefore, if we continue to market and get the message out there, then at least it will become part of a company's journey to net zero. And that's what we're intending to do. I don't intend to dwell too much on this slide. So this goes back to the strategy team's objectives for energy conscious organization. And our basic, I'm going to show you just 3 of the 12 key objectives, but the basic premise of the whole thing is to actually show through example, to demonstrate what can be achieved. To get more significant numbers of these, I'll be showing you 9 which have got clear savings that are outlined a little bit later. And when we can up the numbers and people ultimately start saying, well, you know, if it gets to a chief executive, why aren't we doing this? It's because it's so obvious we should be doing it. That's our route. Sure, we'll continue to try to persuade government and try to get initiatives, and we've had some success, which I'll come on to a little bit later. But we're assuming that that won't happen. All the messaging is that that won't happen, bizarrely. So we're continuing in other ways. So having projects and demonstrating. The second one is to build capacity, because we recognize that to actually achieve that top target, there aren't enough people that are qualified and skilled enough to actually help deliver behavior change programs. And we're continuing to collaborate with various parts of government. Again, I'll come back to that a little bit, but our main aim is to try to make behavior change projects become mainstream. So just very briefly, some of the tools that we've actually got in place. So this is we call the EnCO matrix. It's a gap analysis tool. It helps to determine right at the outset where an organization is, again, against these 5 pillars of engagement, alertness, skills, recognition, and adaptation, or adaptation, if you prefer that word. And we know that to move across from a 0 to a 4 delivers savings. They aren't parallel for any one organization, but moving across to being highly competent in all of these areas is what behavior change is all around. And this is a tool that's free and available. It's on the EnCO website, which I'll send you a link to, or you'll see a link to shortly. And it's made very, very simple. We're also not precious about it, actually. If it needs to be amended for a particular organization, then that can be done. So one bit of possible success, we hope it will be successful, is as a result of discussions with BEIS around ESOS, because behavior change was probably only represented in about 5% of all ESOS reports, possibly less actually, whereas it's going to become hopefully a compulsory part. And we've actually talked about making this tool, one of our tools, available as part of that process. We're running courses, continue to run courses to get energy professionals to become registered EnCO consultants. So you can see the details of the course there. It does incorporate CPD. And that's the first stage for any individual. The second stage is to actually put those learnings into practice and become someone that therefore is an approved EnCO practitioner, someone that's actually done it. We're also lucky enough to have secured a testimonial from BEIS, which is absolutely excellent, actually. It's as far as they've actually reached out, really, to say that they think this is critical. But unfortunately, that's more of an individual within BEIS, which was Gary Shanahan, than we feel that BEIS as a body are actually giving. I can see that there's some things coming in on chat, but haven't read them. So Mervyn, if there is anything that's relevant, if you sort of stop and interrupt and ask those, but otherwise I'll keep those till the end.
There's nothing. No questions at the moment, Jez. That's fine. It's just general chat going through at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. Lovely. Thank you. So if you would like to do the course, it's actually not very expensive. We give up our time pretty much for free. John Mulholland and myself do. So we've actually had 140 registered EnCO consultants so far that have been approved. We're close to our target and should hit our target there. We have 6 people that are approved EnCO practitioners, of which Matt is the latest one. We possibly won't hit that target. Getting approved EnCO practitioners, there's a sort of time delay issue, because clearly, having become a registered EnCO consultant, you then need to deliver a program, and behavior change programs are not fast to deliver. You know, the program might typically be 6 to 12 months, and you've got to actually get it in place first of all. But not a bad achievement. We're actually really happy with our achievement. We're kind of on plan. So, you know, what are the benefits of people solutions? Well, I'll let you have a look at those. But actually the co-benefits of behavior change beyond pure savings is they're actually huge too. And often it's the co-benefits, when you're talking to the board, let's say, it's selling the co-benefits that actually often makes believe it or not, makes a program go ahead. Albeit that who wouldn't do a program that would typically between 3 and 9 month payback these days. On the EnCO website, again, you'll see a number of case studies. They're written in a standard format, a little bit like this one on the right for Aston University. We also have a number of other resource documents we're adding to this all of the time. So do have a look there. If you need to actually show to it, I know it's not necessarily your case study, but if you needed to show to someone as part of, if you like, selling that this is such a key thing to do, give these case studies away. We're not precious about any of our, we just want things to be implemented. And we want it because it's kind of a world-changing thing potentially. And that's why we're putting all our time and effort in. So a few case studies. I've done these in different ways. This is a summary. These are all in the detail is all on the EnCO website. But these are some of the typical figures. So you can see quite high, quite a range, but quite high energy savings purely from behavior change programs. The one there for the power systems manufacturer, those were figures in 2015. That saving now is 14.5%. Some of the other projects that are on there, well, they were only partial behavior change programs. Even the power systems manufacturer actually only implemented 30% of the behavior change mechanisms and interventions, which is why it subsequently grew. And I think they're now up to about having implemented about 50% of the possible interventions. And actually doing it in stages is quite a sensible thing. So it still needs to be reasonably holistic to make it measurable, but actually don't try to boil the ocean and do every one of the 140 plus interventions. And then in a different format, but just to give you an example of other projects that are actually on there and the savings that have been shown through there. So they're quite substantive savings. I can't remember, but perhaps Matt will mention when he comes to his gala bingo. I couldn't determine actually what percentage that 1.3 million was. So it'd be quite good to know that, Matt, when you do your presentation. So moving to the conclusion of my introductory bit really is that if you try to boil down, well, what are we actually, what's a good measure of whether we're being successful? Well, ultimately, it's about having the number of case studies and taking those case studies so they actually go through another approval process, which is that they can become EnCO registered organizations, for which they get recognition. We currently have 2. We only really started earlier this year. And the case studies you've seen on the previous slides could all potentially become EnCO registered organizations. So we're working with those to increase this number. But these are the companies that are really doing good work and maintaining it. They have to show that they're maintaining it to keep their EnCO registered organization certification. I don't know if anyone's seen through COP26, but as part of the EnCO LinkedIn group, for which there's a link there on the top right, then we've been doing a number of posts. We've had quite good numbers. We've also released a video a few months ago, which is on the EnCO LinkedIn group. So again, have a look, join the group if you're interested, and definitely have a look at and use the video, because it's actually a very inspiring video. I won't show it due to connection and other issues, but do look it up. This is it in the bottom right. I said I'd come back briefly to Bays. So we have been discussions with them, although it say 4 years, it's ramped up in recent years. And we're keeping our fingers crossed about the new ESOS phase 3 consultation incorporating behaviour change. I can't see why it wouldn't, and those are the indications. So that's my introduction. I'll come back at the end and summarise. But what I'd like to do now, if Mervyn and Matt would show themselves on camera. I'm going to hand over to Mervyn, because we would like to award, and I know it'll be a bit weird, but it'd be great after the award presentation has been made that we could clap. That would be really good, because it actually is a really good achievement. So I'll just hand over to Mervyn to make this award.
Thanks, Jez. Yes, wouldn't it be good if we could clap? I've yet to see a virtual session. Even the award ceremonies I've seen never quite achieve what you get from being in a room with people. Perhaps one day, I think what we've said is that one day when things do get back to a bit more normal, in fact, we're planning a conference, aren't we, next year? So we might be able to present physically, represent some of those certificates to people in that event in May. That would probably be not a bad thing to do. So yeah, thanks, Jess. Can I just make one plea? And I think, sorry, one thing that did come through on chat literally before the handover, which unfortunately you've got control at the moment, but someone just asked if we could make sure everyone is muted. There was someone came on and there was a bit of background noise towards the end of your presentation, but yeah, if everyone could just make sure they're muted. I can't do it because I think
I can see it. No, yeah, everyone is muted.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, but it's just one of those things where, as I say, literally you could hear someone in the background. Okay, yeah, well, I mean, what can I say? And obviously I'm over the moon, and as Chief Executive Esther, how excited things have been in terms of where EnCO's got to. It's been really good, and as Jess said, we've pretty much met our targets, which under the circumstances in a pandemic, all that original stuff about trying to do face-to-face training, face-to-face activity really just didn't happen, unfortunately, and we had to pivot to online. And thanks to John and Jez for all their efforts, and James Britton, who's also been involved in the program, developing the program. Yeah, massive amount of effort gone in. Brilliant, really, that we've got so close to those targets. It's not surprising at all that the practitioner side has perhaps not quite got there, because, as Jez said, I think the other thing Jez didn't quite say, as well as just the time frame in setting up a case study, obviously the fact that it hasn't necessarily been very easy to have the face-to-face interventions hasn't exactly helped either, to be honest. In fact, I'm really quite pleased that we managed to get to 6 out of 10, which I don't think at all. I think we have got some in the pipeline, Jez, as well, haven't we, beyond the current approved. We're just waiting for those case studies, which, as Jez said, is not an overnight thing. But yeah, looking forward to 2022. So yeah, I'm really, really pleased. I can see myself now, would you believe, for some reason I've probably got the setup not quite right, but I can't see Matt on screen. But yeah, Matt, you're there, obviously, you're on.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing.
Right, okay.
Make it easier.
Yeah, that might help, and then I can see Matt, hopefully. Matt, you're there. Well done.
Hey.
So Matt, yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic achievement. Number 6, not quite number 1, but you're still in single digits. So anyone who's got a single digit reference number on their certificate or on the register, shall we say? I don't actually, unfortunately, looking at the certificate, which I have here. Actually, I don't think you have a number on the certificate, but you're still number 6. You're not 007, which obviously might have another. Someone's going to be 007. But yeah, it's really, Matt, it's a fantastic achievement, and obviously really, really pleased. Hopefully, as well as getting that status, you'll be helping us to spread the word, get the EnCO message out to the world. It's a global program. Jez, you talked a lot about the work we've been doing with the UK government. Obviously, that is important without a shadow of a doubt. But equally, it's a global program, and we've been having lots of discussions with trying to extend the practitioners out, the consultants out overseas and internationally. So it's really good news, and I say hopefully you're going to join the practitioner community that's going to be helping us to spread that word. So really, Matt, without further ado, I'm very happy to virtually present you with this certificate, which, as I said to Matt this morning when he came onto the recording, onto the program, it's back to front as far as I can see it. But Matt, many, many congratulations.
The same one here, which I think is also back.
Yeah, over to you. So I will pass it to you on the screen, and you'll pick it up on the other side. So really excellent news. Well done, Matt. Brilliant news. I'll clap, even if everyone else is muted. So, and I don't particularly necessarily want to unmute everyone. Hands up from Andrew. I see there are a few other hands up. That's the alternative way of doing it. Hands up. Yeah. Thanks. So well done, Matt. Congratulations. Would you like to say a few words of? I think you're going to do it anyway.
I'm going to do a presentation in a very short while, but I'd like to say for my part, I'm very proud and absolutely delighted to have achieved this. Most of my energy management projects have involved some kind of behaviour change when I'm working with companies, and I am really, I find them all really, really interesting, and I'd advise everybody to have a go, because it is, to get involved, because it's surprising what you learn out of it. It really is.
Fantastic. Matt,
so yes, thank you very much.
Is Jez sharing? I'm just sorry, Jez.
Yes, I'm going to share. I'll share the presentation back. Yeah, I'm just saying next slide, but you've probably got about 10 minutes, so it's quite tight for time.
No, don't worry. No, don't worry. I've got now. I'm the next speaker, and I've allowed myself a little bit of leeway. So if it just drifts slightly over, and if people want to ask Q&A, don't forget to put that in the chat. And if we have got a little bit of time, then more than happy to just allow for that time. So over to you, Matt.
Okay, great. Sorry, wrong. There you go.
All right. So this is my case study. It involves the Gala Coral Group, and really actually more Gala bingo than anything. In late 2008, the company I was working for at the time were approached by Accenture with a story about one of their clients being in a bit of trouble, having renewed their, it changes Jez too quickly, doesn't it? Having found themselves in trouble after some renewing their electricity and gas supply contracts in a very volatile market. They needed to cut operational costs to avoid closures and redundancies, and they had little or no money to achieve this. And they asked us to come up with a plan. Next slide, please. So basically, we started off doing a bit of data analysis. We looked at the available half-hourly data that they had, and we typically found that the sites had high base loads and daytime loads that were consistent from opening to closing, regardless of what might be happening at the site at the time. That was the electricity. The gas, we did a regression analysis against the gas against degree days and found it to be consistent by month and consistent by degree days. So we really concentrated our efforts on the electricity rather than the gas side. Next slide, please. We carried out, so the data analysis had already shown that opportunities existed. So we carried out a survey of 6 sites. At the time, they were running casinos, bingo halls, and betting shops, and we did 2 of each. From no and low cost measures, we identified savings at Gala of £850,000 per annum, around 180, 190 locations, and Coral £600,000 per annum across 1,200 locations. This report was presented to the Gala Coral Group main board, along with a plan to roll out behaviour change and small investments to hit 1.6 million savings in electricity on year one. Next slide, please, Jess. There was a strong buy-in from the senior management group for the project. I think that's vital that, that you get that kind of buy-in, because it really is led from the top down, and I'll demonstrate that a little bit later. The plan was to get positive commitment from the managers at each of the 190 bingo and casino locations across the UK, and it required that each one of those sites was surveyed to identify specific actions. That presented a problem in itself. Next slide, please, Jez. So we needed to survey those 190 sites in 6 weeks. There was no way we could have done that. So we took the first week to train a group of lighting and control engineers to carry out targeted surveys for us. They focused on identifying the occupancy times of the buildings, what constituted the base load of the buildings, generally set points around the buildings like the heating, what level of lighting needed to be on at different times of day, and BMS switches, BMS settings and timer switches, locating and just checking over timer switches. At the end of the survey, there was a sign-off sheet for the manager, and it included actions on any of these areas where we identified that the lighting didn't need to be on, it was not to be on during certain times, and also, you know, how to control their base load a bit better. So in order to be able to get the managers bought into this, we needed to show them graphically how they were getting on. So the results of the analysis of the half-hourly data by time of day identified how much could be saved and gave us a financial target. And then it became a matter of making recommendations to the site on how to use their equipment, what temperature settings they should have. Things like walk orders were devised at opening and closing times to make sure that equipment was only on when it needed to be on and was switched off at the end of the day. And most of all, we needed to control the cleaners who were coming in at 5 o'clock in the morning, turning everything on, and it just stayed on until someone switched it all off late at night. So we needed a weekly performance of performance about how they were performing and saving energy, but also we needed to try and tell them when they weren't saving energy. Sorry, and that's this report. So this report shows you every day of the week. Along the bottom, there's a key that shows the different statuses of the site. Non-trading means that there are staff on site and that there is actually no customers on site. So we began by targeting the base load, and as you can see, we were well into the project at the point this graph was done, because the base load is really well controlled. The red bars on the graph identify times when you know, we calculated targets for each section of those of the day, and those red bars showed when you were over the target, when you weren't reacting fast enough to the changes in status of the site. And of course, the little table at the bottom here says the cost this last year and this year, how much you've actually saved, but also how much you missed. So, you know, there was those red bars total up to £94.85 in electricity costs that they didn't, savings that they didn't actually make. As you can see on this, on the pie chart on the right hand side, our target was to get their base load down below 10%, and this is fairly typical for the sites. They were all around sort of 9 to 10% by the time we were in you know, year 2. So next slide, please, Jess. So we needed to send them reports. I've had to mock something up here. So we needed to send them reports against the whole estate. And this graph is really simple. We started out with a budget. We started out with, we then calculated what we wanted our target costs to be. And then we measured the performance. And obviously the nice red line there shows that we were well below our both the budget and the target costs. You know, at 6 months into the year, we're about halfway. So next, please, Jess. So after a while, you start to notice with behaviour change that behaviours start to change again, or didn't change. And so we got the buy-in again from the financial director, who at my little 2B1G says is too bad, one good. She made 3 phone calls every week. She phoned 2 of the clubs who weren't cooperating or were well off target, and 1 who was doing well, who got a pat on the back, a verbal pat on the back. It became known in the group very, very quickly that these phone calls were taking place, and that certainly sped things up a little bit for us. Targets were reviewed every 3 months using the same analysis as for target setting, and some targets were increased based on actual performance. We found that some of the clubs 6 months in had saved more than we projected at the start, and so we needed to reset their targets. But actually 6 months in, what they were doing was just reverting back to what they had been doing before and saying, we've already met our targets, we don't need to do anything for the rest of the year. So recalculating the targets was exactly what we did. I ran training sessions and performance reviews at regional management meetings so that we could make sure that the regional management were up to speed with what was going on. And some sites did struggle to meet targets. They were better managed on the energy front in the first place. And where they couldn't meet targets, we'd visit them, and maybe the targets were eased at just a few of them. But the targets were scientifically calculated and were achievable, we thought, at the outset. So, next, please, Jess. So, £1 million saved in electricity costs in the first year. I'd like to say that was 1 point something, but it was £1 million and a couple of £100. It was bang on target, more or less. The gas analysis that we did at the beginning of the year shows consistent consumption, but this turned out to be consistently bad. And we couldn't tell this until after the full analysis, because obviously we didn't have the same kind of profile data, well after the end of the first year of the project. So a further 300,000 was saved on gas in the first year. This scheme won the EDIE award for Green Corporate Initiative. Yeah, it's very proud of that at the time as well. So project progression. In 2012, the Gala Bingo was bought out by an investment management company, and who decided that the undue pressure put on the site managers was not really fair, and so they relaxed the targets. We were asked not to put undue pressure on them. Many clubs reverted to convenience over efficiency, and within 12 months, bills had gone up by 8% on average. And I will tell you, the original electricity saving was about 12.5%. So that's, you know, two-thirds of what we were saving in the first place. In September 2017, the project was rebranded and relaunched with a target to save £1 million in electricity in the financial year ending September 2018. By this time, Gala Bingo had contracted to maybe 120 clubs. This target was successfully met again, but included some investment in LED and building management systems where we couldn't get the controls, or it was inconvenient to control. We put BMS systems in. When I say inconvenient to control, I mean inconvenient for the staff to control. The project continues to deliver year-on-year savings, with 800,000 saved in financial year ending 2019. So, and that was using 2018 as a target. So that was pretty good performance again. Next, please, Jess. So these are my own observations about running behaviour change projects. Obviously, half-hourly energy data is invaluable for good analysis. It's almost impossible to work out what you're saving. It's almost impossible to work out what you're saving without that half-hourly data. Projects tend to start slowly and gather momentum. So usually about 3 months, you start to see the results that you were looking for. And that takes a lot of interventions to get to that point. When challenging operational activities, expect the answer, we've always done it like this, as a reason not to change. And it's the worst excuse not to change. I found that the base load at night was dependent on who locked the building up when we're talking about bingo halls and casinos. in this example, energy champions had authority, and for me, that's the way it has to be done. They were the ones in charge of the staff who were making the savings. They could enforce rules where without that kind of power, maybe they would have struggled a little more. I found I could speak my mind, and by that I mean the group had an energy manager, and that energy manager was capable. A fresh set of eyes that was brought by myself to this to the group was what was needed, but he didn't feel he could have said some of the things that I said in meetings. So yeah, and that's quite important as well. Peer groups compete. Use this if you can. By that, 8 regions we had 8 regions competing in years 2 and 3 to see who would win, who could save the most money. And when management backing slips at any level, the whole project slips. And I do mean if the regional managers lose interest, and if the site manager loses interest, and if the board relaxes, as we've seen, the project does begin to slip. Reports should be quickly and easily interpreted, because basically they're targeted at people who are usually already busy before they receive the report, and they just want to look at it and move on. And also don't relax when targets are met. So as Jez said, when you start, you find that you're saving a whole lot more than you actually meant to. I've had that happen a couple of times, and it's very easy to sit back and pat yourself on the back, but what you really need to do is to push on a bit. So yeah, that was it. I think that's the end. Unless you want to show the last slide. So
thank you very much. I
just
wanted to say
just before I finish,
yeah,
this was always included at the end of my presentations, because everybody said it's a carrot and stick, but more stick than carrot. So I do know that the managers of the sites were bonused on their energy performance after the first year. So it was a good scheme, and it worked very well.
You must be psychic.
Just briefly.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Just briefly, apologies that some of the slides skipped. We didn't realise until the first thing that those slides were actually had a time built in. Yes. So I occasionally had to go forward and back. So apologies for that. Just a couple of minutes if there are any questions from anyone. Just unmute and speak up if that's.
Yes, it's easier.
Anyone has any?
If anyone has got any questions there. No, it's not looking.
You obviously answered every single point.
And Matt, you must be psychic, Matt. You must realise that I was about to say, you segued nicely into the fact that carrots and sticks, that features in the manifesto as well. Actually, it's for me, it's an important aspect of an approach to getting people to invest in energy efficiency. You've got to have some carrots, and equally you've got to have some sticks. But more on that in a minute.
So just to thank you so much for that, Matt. Just to
I know I rushed through it a bit, but
don't worry, it's not a problem.
No, it was very good, and it is a great case study. And yeah, thanks for that. So 12.5% on electricity. So again, you know, you've seen some pretty high numbers here. They are substantive. Just in case anyone isn't aware, in terms of the registered EnCO consultants course, the cost of it for all the modules is a normal cost is about £400, something like that.
No,
I think that's after I think that's after a discount.
There is a discount option available for certain people, and equally, I would say for ESTA members, of course, ESTA members it's free. So obviously, I'm allowed to put that lad in there.
And that's exactly the point I was going to make. That's where I was getting to. So
thank you, Jez. Thank you.
Yeah. So do consider that. I just wanted to point out, if you do fancy getting involved in our EnCO conference, put that date in your diary, 18th of May. It's booked in for the Energy Institute offices in London. So we will be getting together face to face. Everything else being equal, of course. Yes. So yeah, please put that date into your diary. And by way of a final summary slide, what would I say? Well, technology alone is not the answer, and if it was deemed to be the only answer, then actually you'd be doing it the difficult way. The behavior change opportunity is huge. It's a key part of net zero. And, you know, surely we should be trying not to use energy in the first place. And therefore, we hope we can continue to get EnCO to become part of government strategy. And we hope the foot in through the door will be through the ESOS phase 3 and there, but more of that in the future. If you can provide any support at all to us, then please do. And yes, don't forget, it's a truly global initiative. And if there are any final questions, if we have got a minute, just unmute and shout. Otherwise, I will say adios, although I'm staying on actually, and I'll pass over to Mervyn.
Yeah, I think